and welcome to Spring Into Java. I am your host, Glave, and in today's video we are going to make a minor change to the registration form, as well as we are going to make some changes to our bookshelf repo, our bookshelf DTO object. We're going to create a utilities class so that we can easily work with the date and time, as well as we're going to make a couple of DTO objects, or data transfer objects, before we dive on in and create our service layer for for our web application. And this will include a book service, as well as a bookshelf service. So, if you're ready to learn, this may be a long video, so fill up that cup of coffee, and we'll dive on in. So, in here we are going to need to first make a private long object, and we're going to call this one the Discord user ID. We are also going to copy that so we can go into our Spring Boot application and include that variable here as well. Also, we are going to go into the user DTO object, or the registered user DTO object, and we're going to add this into here, as well into our registered user, so that we can be persisting this into our database. Next, we're going to pop into our registration form. This would be our model handler in our Discord application. So here we just want to add the Discord user ID, and we're going to get that through the Discord our Discord's JDA library. From the member object, we're going to get the ID as a long, and that is going to be how you identify, or it's the most optimal way of identifying or calling out to your Discord users, as with the new name change, it's no longer suggested to tag your app, but use the Discord tag as your method of identifying the user. Rather, using the Discord ID, you can get the user as a tag and ping them if you need to. I can do a different video on more specifics about the Discord side of things if you'd like. Just drop me a comment. So after we have this included into here, that's going to be our registration form DTO. We're passing over the network into the Discord form DTO that is on our Spring library. So next we need to go into our user registration service. So this is where we are creating the new registered user. And underneath the password, we're going to add in the Discord user ID again. So here, we're going to go down to set the Discord user ID to that from the DTO object. So, next thing that we need to do is we need to make some edits to our repositories. So, we're going to go right on into our our Dis library Spring Boot application, and we're going to go into the repos package. In here, we are looking to go into the bookshelf repository, and we're going to make a slight change to how we are getting this. We're going to actually be making the change to a optimal, which is, an optional, and optional, and this will allow us to do a quick check if it is present or not, and if not, provide us an alternative. So the next thing that we're going to look to do is make a small change inside of the book repository. In that, we're going to make a couple of alternative ways to get some information. So we are going to request to get an optional, and we're looking to find by, but we're not looking to find by ID. We're looking to actually find by, and now there's a lot of ways that Spring can allow you to find this, and this would be based on the variables that are within the class. So in our scenario, we are looking to find by shelf ID and the Discord owner ID, because we want to be able to get just a single book object out of our repository. So we're going to go ahead and say find by shelf ID and owner Discord ID. And now we just simply need to pass in the second parameter, that would be the Discord ID. And just so we're not getting confused here, we are just going to call this get. And the other options that we're looking to do here is we want to be able to find it by the ISBN numbers. So we're going to make a quick other optional, and this one is going to be for a book again, but this is going to be a find by, and it's going to be, we're going to go by the ISBN 10. So, and we're just simply going to take in a long variable here. And after that, we can just go ahead and duplicate this line and make the quick change to alter this to 13. There we go. And lastly, we do also want a way to get a collection of books based on just the shelf ID. Next, we're going to need to go into our bookshelf object, and we are actually going to need to create a way of keeping track of the shelf ID, and this is just going to be so that we can map it back and forth. So we're just going to go ahead and create a private long variable and call this shelf ID. Alright, so next thing that we need to do is actually create some data transfer objects. So in here we're going to need to make a book data transfer object and a book shelf transfer object. Now we are going to go into our data option here. We do have DTOs within our network package, but those would be data transfer objects that we're specifically passing through around in the network or back and forth through the network. Whereas these are going to be data transfer objects that we're going to be passing primarily back and forth throughout our application. However, they may be also passed throughout the network depending on how this application goes. So for now, we're just going to create a new package within our data package and just call this one DTO. And within here, we're going to create and it's going to be just this simple. We're going to copy the book object and paste it into here, but we're just going to rename this DTO. And we're going to go ahead and save. Now, we are going to be removing a couple of things because we're not looking to keep track of anything sort of database related or database identifier. We're not an entity anymore, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of that. So this would be all of the information that we're looking to keep track of or pass them around the network. So, or the application, sorry. Next, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with the shelf. We're going to copy, paste, rename this one to DTO as well. And then we're going to go ahead and get rid of the entity marker so that Spring is not looking at this as an entity. And we're also going to get rid of the database identification information so that we're left with just the data information that this model needs. And next, from here, we're going to actually go ahead into our dislib package and we're going to create a new package for the utilities. We're just going to call this util for short, and within here we're actually going to create a new Java class. This is going to be an interface, and we're going to call this date time utils. Right now, this is just going to act as a functional interface because we're only going to have one simple method in here at the moment, and this is just going to be a method or a string object, but the method is going to be a way of getting the current date and time. So let's go ahead and create a default method or a default string, and it's just going to be get current date and time. Now in here it is just going to, we're going to have to create a date time formatter, and we're just going to call this DTF, and that is just going to be equal to a datetime formatter dot of pattern. And this just allows us to tell Java what sort of pattern we're looking to get our dates in. And in our case, we want to go with the year, month, date. And we also want, just so happen, to keep track of the time, so we're going to include hours, minutes, and seconds in there as well. Next, we want to get an instance of right now. So we're just simply going to return the date time formatter dot format, and this is just going to take in a local date time of right now. And that will return a string value of right now in a year, month, date format with the timestamp as well. So next, from here, we are now going to look to create our services class. So we are going to go into our services package and create a new Java class, and this is going to be our book service. Now, first thing that we need to do in here is we are going to annotate this as a service class so that Spring knows just how to treat this. We're also going to go ahead and utilize the required args constructor from Lombok so that we can come down here and take in our book repository. So we're going to go ahead and create a private final object that is the book repository, and we'll just call that book repository. We also need to make sure that this class is going to implement our date-time formatter. So we're going to go ahead and implement the date-time utils that we had just created. Now, within here, we're going to need to create a couple of useful classes, or a couple of useful methods. We're going to take one that is going to convert a data model into a data transfer model so that we can pass in the actual model that we just pulled from the database and convert it into a data transfer object so that we can pass that around amongst our other layers of our application model. So this is going to be a private method, and it's just simply going to be a book DTO. And it is going to simply be called convert object to DTO. And it's going to take in a simple book object, and that is going to be our model, or our object. Now, in here, we're going to start out by creating a book DTO, and we're just simply going to call this one a DTO and make it equal to a new book data transfer object. Now we will go ahead into here and DTO.set. Oh, let's have a look and see exactly what method, what is in our book object here, and we'll drop that over here. So we are looking to basically set everything that we are not looking to keep, the book DTO object there, and so we're looking to take the title, the author, the theme, the description, publisher, published date, and the other information. So to save time, I'm just going to pause the video while I enter in all of the setters for this. Alright, so now you'll see that we have converted our data object to just the relevant information that we need to transfer. So next we're going to need a way to create a new book object based on the data transfer object that we're passing in. So to do this, we are going to need to create a book object, and we're just simply going to make, again, this is going to be a private book object, and it's going to be to create new book object. And we're simply going to take in the book DTO object. And within here, we're basically going to be doing the same thing, just sort of in reverse. So in here, we are going to basically copy all of this and drop it in here, because now we're looking to fill out the book information. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a minor edit to here, as this is technically the book, and this is going to be new book. Now we're going to have to rename all of this, as well as we are going to need to make minor edits to the name of here, as this is now going to be just DTO. So what we just did there, just to run over that, is we're creating a new book object, we've named it create new book object. We're taking in a book data transfer object that will be created by our controller. And once we create this new data object, we're going to create a new book here. And when we're creating the new book, it will auto-generate an ID for this book. So when we come down here to the shelf ID, we can actually set this to be the to get the UID of it. Sorry, we can change this to be the new book dot get UID. As that will have been generated for us when the class gets created. And now we're setting the shelf ID to be something truly unique, which would be that of the database ID. So once we're here, the next thing that we're going to need to do is timestamp this. So our new book object, we're going to need to set created on, and we're just simply going to get the current date and time, as we just created that in our previous interface, the date-time utilities. We're going to go ahead into the new book and also do our set updated on, which is also the same time. Now that we've created a brand new object, all that's left to do is return this new book. Done. So now we have a way to create a brand new book. We also have a way to convert a book object. So what do we have left? Well, we need a way to update a book object. So this is going to be a public option. So this one is public. It is going to return a book. Sorry, this is actually going to be a boolean that we're going to return. And we're just going to call this updated book. And in here we are going to take in a book object, which will be the book to update. And we are also going to take in a book object, our book DTO object, as we're going to be taking in this will be when we are, for example, updating the database object that we're going to be doing. So in here we're going to take in a book DTO, and we're just going to call this DTO. And in here, the first thing that we're going to look to do is to basically the same thing as converting a data object, except the object that we're similar idea to creating a new book object more. So we can go ahead and take this, and we're going to drop it here. We're going to take the book to update aspect, and we're going to just drop that all in here. This is now going to be the DTO dot get bookshelf, and of course we're not creating, but we are still updating. Now the only thing left to do here, of course, is to save it. So we're going to go into our book repository, and we're actually going to call save. And we're just going to pass in the book to update. And below that we can just simply return true. Well, actually technically what we would do here, or what we could do here just to validate that this has been updated, we can do a simple call to the book repository dot find by ID. We're going to do a find by ID, and this is going to be that of the new book. Sorry, book to update, and we're going to call on this ID. Now this is just going to be a simple quick check to see if this is actually there. So, of course, if the book is present, then return true. Because if we just ran through this and made a save to the database where we save this specific book, if for some reason we can't find that book, we're just going to go ahead and, well, okay, to be a little more accurate, let's go ahead and make sure that we're going to grab the book. Just going to simply get a hold of the book, and we'll store that in a variable as well, and we'll just simply call it cached book. Now, if the objects here are the same, then we know that it wasn't updated. So, because this is the only way that we're actually updating the updated timestamp on the book, we can simply check that the timestamp in the cached one that we just found, if it is the same as the timestamp on the one that we had just submitted, then we know that the book has been updated. So we're going to go ahead and make a simple check to see if the objects dot equal, and the two objects that we're looking to compare are the cached book dot get updated and the book to update dot get updated on. So if these two are the same, if these are one and the same, then we are going to return true. Else, we're just otherwise it hasn't been updated. So else we're just going to return false. And our IDE tells us that we can simplify this, so we're just going to go ahead and do that because it usually makes things a little bit easier. So this is going to return that, and of course we're just going to, otherwise the book's not been found, it's not in our database, so we can just return straight out false. Because if it's not in the database, it clearly has not been updated. So again, just to quickly run over all of this, because that might have been a lot of information, to update it, we're simply taking the book to update, setting all the information into it equal to all of the information within the data transfer object. We're also going to set the updated time to that current time and date right now, and then we're going to save it. Next, we are then going to simply find this book and see if it's there. If it is, then we are going to compare the book to that of the data transfer, or that of the cached book, and the book to update to make sure that the times are the same. If they are, great. If they're not, then it wasn't updated. And of course, if it's not present, it hasn't been updated. So, next thing that we're going to need to do in here is we're going to need to make a way to find all of the books, but of course we only want this to be of the data transfer objects. So create a public object here. This is going to be a list of book DTOs, and we're simply going to call this one find all, and what we're going to return is going to be, we are going to return the book repository dot let's get this imported first. So this is going to be the book repository dot find by shelf ID. Sorry, find all. And from that, we are then going to simply stream it in, and we want to map this to that of a converted data object, and then we're just simply going to collect it. The next thing that we're going to do is copy and paste this so that we can do the same thing but find all for a specific shelf ID. And in here we're going to take in a long of the shelf ID. And of course we're actually going to change this one to find by shelf ID, and we're going to pass in that long variable that we have, stream it in, and map those to a data transfer object and collect the list. Done. Now, the next thing that we're going to be doing is creating a bookshelf service so that we can do the same thing. We are going to need to create a way to make a new bookshelf, a way to create a new create a data transfer object for the shelf, update the shelf, find it, and search for it. So if you take a sip of that coffee, we'll have a brief pause and then run down that next service class. So the next thing we actually have to do before we get into our bookshelf service, we want a way to be able to find a book from our repository based on the ISBN number. So we are going to be making another public option, and this is going to be a book DTO. And this one is going to be to get book DTO for ISBN 10, and this is going to take in a long variable which will be the ISBN 10. And what we're going to do here is fetch this from our book repository, and we're just going to call this book, and that will be equal to the book repository dot find by ISBN 10, and we're just going to simply pass in the ISBN 10, and of course we're now going to return the book, and we're going to map that to the converted book object, and simply if it's not there, then we're just simply going to return back a null. This is what I was talking about with the reason that optionals are very good, is that it allows us to do something like this so that we can simply say that if we for some reason cannot map this to our database, then we want it to return a null instead. If there's nothing there in the database to map, then return a null. So in here, we now do this by the ISBN 10 as well as the ISBN 13. We can find one by our shelf, or we can find a collection of books on the shelf, and we can find all of the books that are in the repository. So next thing we're going to do is quickly create a bookshelf service. So we're going to go ahead and create our new service, and this is going to be the bookshelf service. We are going to go ahead and annotate this with our service and our required args constructor. Now this one here, we are actually going to be taking in a private final bookshelf repository, as well as we're going to be taking in a private final book service, which we'll just simply call the book service. This is so that we can we're also going to be taking in we're also going to be implementing the date time utils that we had created earlier as well, so that we can timestamp when our bookshelf is created and updated. So, in here, we're going to need a way to convert a bookshelf into a bookshelf DTO. So, we're going to drop this over here, and we're also going to take the bookshelf DTO, because this is what we're looking to set. So, we're going to go ahead and create another private bookshelf, and this is going to be convert object to DTO, and we're going to go ahead and spell that right. Add our parentheses, take in our book object, or bookshelf object, sorry, and we'll go ahead and just call that shelf. So we're going to come down here and create our bookshelf DTO. And we're going to go ahead and set up the few setters here. So just one moment, I'll be right back. And now there is one other thing that I noticed while I was writing this out, is that we also need to keep track of, for the fact that this is the DTO and the data transfer, we're going to also be looking to keep track of a collection of, you guessed it, book DTOs. And this is the bookshelf contents. So we're going to make this equal to that of a new array and leave it without being assigned for now. We're also going to make sure that we call this private, and we're going to come over here and set the shelf DTO, set shelf contents equal to that of the book service dot find all for the shelf ID, which is going to be that of the shelf. So that's going to go ahead and basically convert the shelf object data to our data transfer object. And next, we're going to need a way to create a new bookshelf, as well as make a way to add a book to a shelf, as well as we're also going to make a way to save a new bookshelf. So, just give me one moment and I will be right back after I slap together some code. Alright, so I have made a couple of small changes so that when we create our bookshelf, we're actually passing in the name, the description, and the Discord ID for the owner, and then we're just going to populate it with that information, as well as the created date and the updated date. We also have an update shelf, where we're updating our shelf information, as well as updating the time that it was updated and returning the shelf itself. Also, we now have a method to add a book to the shelf. This takes in a shelf DTO and a book DTO. It will then go to the book, set the shelf ID to that of the shelf it's set, which will add it to the bookshelf. Into the book service, if it returns that the book was updated, then we're simply going to print out a message that we've successfully added the book to our shelf. Otherwise, we're going to throw a runtime error just simply stating that there was an error adding the book to the shelf. We also have created a way to get a bookshelf based on the user. So we are simply looking for the user here, and we're returning them as an optional. You can also, you see me do it in here already, return this as a variable, and it will justify that for you. So in here, we're getting a bookshelf based on the Discord user's ID, and if it is present, then we are going to convert it to an object and simply add all of the books that are for this user. We've also made a change in the book services class to update our books, or to be able to update our book, as well as we've also added a method so that we can save a book, where we're just simply passing in the book and calling save on it, as opposed to inside of the update method, which we are now just simply updating. So, in our next video, we are going to be making a controller which is going to interface with our service classes to be able to accept HTTP post requests to a specific endpoint that we're going to create, and we will begin to utilize some of this information so that we can add books to our database, create shelves for our users, and add books to shelves, and it will be a booking good time. So if you want to book your time ahead, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to be notified when our next video comes out. You can check off that little notification bell as well. And if you happen to have found this video useful or found my teaching style very refreshing, feel free to hit that like button. If you happen to have any sort of comments that you want to leave, whether you want me to go over something in more detail or get into something in the comment section, feel free to drop me a comment, or you can join us on Discord if you would like to join the chat. You can ask freely ask any questions you like, or we can share me some code and I will help you out with it. Again, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure doing this video and this series. Thank you very much if you've made it this far, and congratulate yourself. It's been a long road. So, I'll see you next time in our next video, where we're going to dive into controllers and endpoints. Again, I was your host, Glabe.